let the minutes reflect that all board members are, there's only 4 board members in attendance. Tracy Strichick, Jamie Jackson, and Billy. Please stand while I lead us in invocation and remain standing for the pledge.
God, thank you for all of your many blessings. Please give us wisdom tonight as we make decisions. God, please be with our families this summer as vacations, travel, just a great summer. Please be with, we've got several students in the system that have medical needs. Just please be with them and their families, the doctors that are working with these students. God, thank you for all your many blessings. Do so we pray. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board members, you have received the agenda for the meeting. May I get a motion to approve? I have a motion to approve. Second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the agenda, please raise your right hand. Mr. Whitman?
Thank you, Dr. Stritch. First item on our agenda for receiving information, I would like to have our examiners of public accounts representative, Ms. Liz Warren, to our 2024 audit report. This requires no action by the board. This is in compliance with our annual audit. Welcome back.
Thank you. And I'm just gonna read a little bit and then I'll let y'all go. In accordance with the provisions of Code of Alabama 1975, section 16-13A-73E, I'm here to present the audit report on the Talk County Board of Education covering the period October 1, 2023 through September 30th, 2024. This report is available in its entirety on our website, www.examiners.alabama.gov, and it was published on May 30th, 2025. We conducted our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards for the purpose of rendering an opinion on the financial statements and to determine whether the board complied with applicable laws and regulations. We also conducted an audit on the board's federal financial assistance programs in accordance with the provisions of Title II U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, Uniform Administrative Requirements, and Cost Principles and Audit Requirements for federal boards, which is known as Uniform Guidance. We issued an unmodified opinion on the board's financial statements for the year ended September 30th, 2024. We also issued an unmodified opinion on the following major federal programs. That was going to be the COVID-19 Education Stabilization Fund and the Special Education Cluster. However, we noted the following matters and have included an audit finding in our report. This finding was considered to be an instance of non-compliance with state and local laws and regulations and other matters, and is presented in the audit report as the schedule of state and local legal compliance and other findings beginning on page C of our report. And it's listed as finding 2024-001, and it relates to the board's failure to comply with the Public Works Law. During testing that was performed, the examination revealed the board entered into the following contracts for projects that met the definition of the Public Works project without adhering to the requirements of the Public Works Law. And that was the intercom system installation in the amount of $325,803.87, and then a digital camera install in the amount of $366,303.12. The board utilized a purchasing cooperative contract and a state contract for these purchases, which were not in accordance with the Public Works Law. Additionally, there are findings considered to be significant efficiencies in internal controls with one of the financial statement findings presented in section 2 of the schedule of findings and question costs, and one with related to a federal award, which is listed in the findings and question costs presented on section 3 of the schedule of findings and question costs beginning on page 64 of our report. The first finding is listed as finding 2024-002, which relates to the board's failure to correctly record cash with fiscal agent on the financial statements. During the audit, it was determined that the cash with fiscal agent was inaccurately reported, which resulted in understated assets, fund balance, procedures and internal controls were not followed to ensure the assets, fund balance, and net position were accurately reported in the financial statements. As a result, assets, fund balance, and net position were understated by $1,269,471.58. When brought to the attention of the board, management made the corrections to address that and get that correct on financial statements. And then finding 2024-03 relates to the board's failure to bid federal purchases according to the Uniform Guidance and Title 39 of the Code of Alabama, which is referred to as the Public Works Law. The Ottawa County Board of Education entered into two public works contracts for the purchase and install of network equipment totaling $171,824.78, and for the purchase and install of network switches, wireless access points, and digital signage totaling $199,292.13. A total of $321,409.70 in COVID education stabilization funds were expended on the projects during the audit period. The board did not bid projects. Instead, the board utilized the purchase cooperative contract, which are not in accordance with Public Works law. We have included recommendations to correct those findings presented in the audit report, and the superintendent has gone ahead and done a corrective action plan on that audit report, which is going to be reflected as Exhibit 18 on the audit report, which is going to be on page 68. If there's any further questions, those can be directed towards our main office in Montgomery. We just want to thank everybody for accommodating us while we were here, because we know it was longer than expected. So, like I said, if y'all have any questions, I can't answer them in this setting, but those can always be directed to our main office. So, thank y'all for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Warren. Any questions there? I will say, like Ms. Warren said, there's a couple of things that popped up that we thought we were doing the correct way. We have taken all corrective measures. There was nothing intentional. You'll see some of the wording changed in your memos today. We're quoting every little verbiage necessary from the law, from anything that they have recommended. So you will see some of the memos that are even more descriptive than what we've done in the past. So, but we appreciate them helping us navigate some of those issues, and we look forward to continuing to comply like we always try to do. All right, so the second item on the agenda for students' information, policy 521 update. As you're all aware, the recent passing of the Focus Act requires us to have a policy in place by July 1st that meets the requirements of the law. The law is very specific, and it is intentional on what devices are not allowed to be on and powered on in the schools by the students and utilized during the day. Additionally, the law specifies what is to be considered a portion of the instructional day. And I'll stop there for just a second. So the law's intent is to basically keep cell phones or any type of device that can be used to communicate from being on in the school day. In your packet, you will see our proposal to try to hit the needs of the law, but also to try to do what we need to do to be in compliance at all times. A few points I want to point out on this. All devices are listed in the law. We also have those devices listed in your policy. So some of the specific things that are here on it, again, we copied and pasted from the law itself. The law does put in, it mentions smart watches, gaming devices, pagers, laptops, tablet computers, cell phones. It's very specific, and all that's in the proposed policy. We also included the exceptions to the policy, again, as directed by the law. We have exceptions listed such as the IEP, 504 health plan accommodations. Lastly, the law specifies that electronic devices cannot be used during times such as class transitions and lunch. That's going to be a major shift, especially in our secondary campuses. When I was a principal, I allowed students to have them out in the hallways or at lunch, and That's gonna be a big change on all of our high school campuses. The law is very specific on what it says, and quite frankly, what has been allowed is not allowed in accordance to the law. So, it's gonna be a process to educate our public, it's gonna be a process to educate everybody on what we expect. I've also included, what our principals and central office staff and myself felt was a sensible discipline progression, due to the nature in how the state law, states that consequences may be there. So I know that's a lot of stuff. I know you probably have more specific questions based off the packet that you had, and I will do my best to answer them. And again, there will be more updates coming. Our SSA conventions in 2 weeks. We will get some policy updates from there. What you have is a starting point, and this allows us to legally be able to get something on the books, like the law says, by July 1st. So that's why it's tonight, and I'm sure there's some questions. Go ahead.
I got a few little notes. I think we're gonna have to be very careful, and it's gonna be clearly defined what's considered own persons, and then powered off of, if we're gonna say a purse is allowable of having it in, and a kid dumps out her purse trying to find something, if we see the phone, is that a violation, or as long as it's powered off? I mean, I think it's gonna be clearly defined for parents, for kids, and for teachers, of staff, of what is allowed, what's not. If it's seen, if it's in the locker and somebody walks by, is that allowed or not? I know in a lot of our schools, kids will use phones for hotspots, like only classes and different things. I think really training our teachers of, we can't just forget, and then all of a sudden the kid gets in trouble. I think there's gonna have to be some training, and we're gonna have to, I know we push a lot of things at the kids, but I think with our staffs as well, a lot of training and making sure that it's clearly defined what the structure is gonna look like, and going from that. I'll also say this, we're all attached to these things. I mean, I don't wanna be a hypocrite, because it's always at my side. We're really gonna have to talk to our staff, because it's one thing if a kid can't use it, and then staff members walking down the hall shooting a text to somebody, because we're used to it. I wouldn't even think about it, and I could see myself doing it. I feel like there's a lot of things that we need to cover over the summer, and a lot of training, not just for kids, but for our staffs, our principals, and then make sure parents have had a chance to read over and understand what these expectations, and to be able to ask the questions they need to ask. I did have like a question of, what are we gonna define like this emergency? Like if a kid is being bullied, is that considered an emergency, or is it what's life or death? Do any ideas of?
You're hitting on some of the same questions we had as well. I'll go through the own person deal. We talked to law enforcement. A couple of our partners said, well, a book bag would be on person. Some of them said it would not. So I agree 100% what you're saying, that we're gonna have to identify what on person means and what it doesn't mean. What's in there now, I gave you some examples of what I would propose to allow, but again, as we navigate the next couple of weeks, if it becomes clear what I've thrown out there is not gonna work, then we'll change it. The part about the staffing, I agree as well. We're gonna have to make sure our teachers understand, the days of, hey, pull out your phones and use them for Kahoot because it was easier. We can still do that by the law because it's instructional, but if you're gonna do that, now you also gotta ensure that they all power them off, that they do everything in compliance with the law. So what Mr. Conyers and all of us are looking at as well is, what is our device capability at each campus? Do we have enough devices? Do we have charging carts in classes? It's opened up a lot of different issues that we need to make sure we have the answer to. What was the other part of that? I'm sorry.
Emergency.
Yeah, emergency. What defines emergency? And that's so touchy because, if you tell a student, hey, that's not an emergency, I think you just got to defer to what your administrator investigates. So, kid gets sent to the office because they had their phone and, hey, it was an emergency, and then administration does their investigation and it was not, hey, they were just calling their friend. Well, that's one thing, but I think we got to have some leeway with the admin on what is an emergency, what is not. I have concerns about exactly what you're saying, where a kid feels like they're being bullied, instead of letting us know, they call the parent, and they get seen on the phone, and then it turns into a whole different spiral. You know, it's gonna be educating our kids on, look, we need you to come to the office, do the bullying report, talk to us before you make those calls, you know.
Because we all know what's gonna happen. I mean, they're gonna go to the bathroom and shoot the text off at that point in time, and you know, I've got a lot more questions. Just because what's gonna happen is when the posts go online and a parent's mad at this other kid and they're gonna screenshot that post that it's at 1:30 and they send it to the administrator. Is that something we gotta investigate now? I mean, like, it's just.
And I think we have to clearly define that on it, because if it's in a safe place, meaning your purse, and your purse is on your shoulder, is that on your body, you know? And also, I have a problem with just having a policy just because it's a law. I really think you're head on saying you need to provide protection, not just to our students, but to our families. Like, cell phones are detrimental. I mean, those schools that have no cell phones have better outcomes, academic outcomes, and lower discipline problems. And so those that know the why then can understand why they don't want to use a cell phone, or shouldn't use a cell phone.
I think July is gonna be a month of lots of videos, lots of information out to parents, lots of messages for parents where this is what we're gonna allow, not allow, clearly identify, clearly nail down specific examples like you're talking about. You know, hey, you can have your phone in your purse, you cannot have that. Like, those are the things we've got to nail down. On my end right now, what I'm recommending is, I always like to ease into something a little better than just going straight into it. What you have is a progression in terms of infractions with K2 to 3.6 to 7.12. Again, that's kind of what our principals have kind of designed. You will see very little tolerance at the secondary level, again, because if we're putting it out there what we're expecting, then our secondary kids should be able to accommodate that a little better. I see issues like, you know, I was talking to some elementary principals today. They wanted to build in a warning for like K2, and their thought process is, hey, you know, parents have gotten accustomed to tracking their K2 kid based off the Apple Watch, you know. So I see a lot of problems and issues that are coming. To agree with what y'all saying, we're going to have to use some specific examples on, hey, this is allowed, this is not. Parents, if you want to be able to track your kid after school to know did they get home afterwards, here's how that's going to look. And the way it's written right now, that smartwatch would have to be powered off in the book bag during the day, and the kid can power it on after school, and then that parent can track your kid or whatever. So there's a lot of those type situations that I think once we get out of SSA next week or 2 weeks from now, we see what policy recommendations they have. You know, we got AASPs. I thought it was kind of vague, which I understand why, but I think we're going to have to drill down how we interpret. And it does. It goes back to the stuff. That's our debate internally: is what is on person, what is not.
And are the bags just too expensive?
Well, I don't remember the exact dollar amount. I want to say it was $400,000 to $500,000 last year when I priced it all district wide. My struggle with the pouches is our facilities are in such bad shape. I'm weighing, and this is where we're at with this stuff. Yes, we got a little more ATF money, but do you spend $400,000 on, I'm not being ugly, the plastic pouch, or do you put flooring in the school? And that's the reality of what that decision is, whether you go pouches or not. And but I will get a definitive cost on that so that I can answer that a little more
Usually
specific.
we do pouches, put them in their backpacks, so then it's on your person, or, so then it goes to that definition, so you're still.
See, I appreciate you saying
There's a
that,
little
because
technicalities
that
there.
is, and I've talked to some legislature guys, hey, what was the intention here? Now, I did not watch the press conference, I will say that, but I've been told that Governor Ivey mentioned the yonder pouch. Well, if I'm carrying the yonder pouch, then you're its own person, depending on who you ask. Again, that's not the whole own person. So what you have before you right now is, okay, if we have a yonder pouch and we're gonna allow them to carry a yonder pouch, well, in my mind, how is that any different than the purse or the backpack? To me, the phone has to be powered off because it specifically says that in the law. It has to be put on. So I personally think that's where we camp out. You know, have some flexibility there. Hey, you can have your phone, you can have your smartwatch, but it's got to be powered off in your backpack, in your purse, in your locker. in a yonder pouch if we decide to go that route, because I see an argument coming if we go yonder pouches and we say you can have it in the yonder pouch, but you can't have it in the purse. Well,
It's no different,
it's the same rationale.
and you can't
Except for
show
they
that
can
it's
just reach in their
marijuana.
purse and get it,
Correct.
with a yonder pouch they
Correct.
have.
Correct.
But then you also have little kids that will get a burner phone, I mean, put
Oh,
the
that's
burner phone
happened,
in their yonder pouch, and you can't prove,
Right.
otherwise.
It's,
I mean, I like to think our kids are pretty smart, so I think,
it is I understand the intent of the law, we all do. The practicality of what it's gonna look like the first few weeks of school, I think it's gonna be determined on how clear we are with what we allow, what we don't allow.
No, I agree.
And,
Yeah.
I think the premise of everything is great. As an educator, we know it's very difficult when kids aren't engaged and when they're distracted by the phones and how tied they are to the phones. We know that. What's so hard is it's just not kids. We all are tied to it. And as a parent, I'm bad about, you shoot text constantly to your kids. You check it like 360, all of those type things. Trying to break that. That's why I keep saying it's not just about the kids that we're going through training. It's with our staff.
It's all of us.
Because as a teacher, how many times you walk down the hall, and I'm trying to shoot a text or I'm trying to do something, kids model what they see. And when they see us with our head down on the phone, what are we saying to them? I think we've got to have very clearly defined expectations of what this looks like. And I think we're going to have to look at some of the consequences earlier is better, because we really need to get our parents involved in this, our teachers, our principals. Really, this is truly one of those things that we do need all of our stakeholders to be involved, because I'm sure there's some things that we haven't even thought of consequence-wise.
Well, what you hope is, as these situations arise, we use common sense on the things that can be a little squirrely. The situation you just mentioned, the phone falls out of the purse. Well, if we've allowed it to be in the purse and it's powered off, well, I personally wouldn't expect that to come to us, if that's what we've allowed.
But sometimes it will suffer interpretation.
Correct, and that's why I appreciate what y'all saying, because that's why the examples in the training is gonna be so important on the front end for me to train our admin, so they can train the teachers. These are the things. Now, if it's supposed to be off, we allow it to be on the in the purse, and the phone rings in the class, well, yeah, that's not in accordance to the law, so we would need to follow through with things. So I think it's gonna be a lot of those type of scenarios, and probably need to do some public scenarios like that too, once we get the policy nailed down.
Yeah, because I guarantee there's things kids are gonna think of and I have questions about that we haven't thought the parents are gonna have, and teachers, and,
Right.
as much as we can get those voices, I think it helps us build a strong policy that we feel good about, and I agree with you, Tracy, of really PD and our staff, our parents, and we'll work through it.
Well, one more thing on it, I think it's important also, the law very specifically lays out what is the instructional day. In this draft policy we have, we define it as the tardy bell to the dismissal bell. I think that gives a little flexibility to parents as well again, honestly, I think the law is written to fix instruction. So do I really care if they're on their phone in the hallway before school? The answer is no, I don't. I don't think, talking to legislative members, I don't think that was the intent, to go total whatever, because in the law later on, it's talking about, if there's an emergency, if they don't have it, why would you put it in there to be able to call your parents in an emergency? So, I think there's just things like that, and using common sense, and I think if we can nail down to everybody what is the instructional day, again, as a principal, this would be a shift in how I ran my school, because again, I allowed them to have phones in the hallway or in the lunchroom. If you ever do something you weren't supposed to do, I disciplined the behavior, I didn't discipline having a phone. That's not allowed the way it's written, so there's gonna be a lot of that in training. All right, any other questions there? All right, briefly, I'll ask Ms. Harrington, we're right here, at a crucial point of our personnel hiring for next year. Ms. Harrington, can you give us a quick rundown on where we're at there and how you see that?
The numbers that I'll give you tonight are based on the personnel report being approved later in the meeting. Out of 650 certified spots, all but 13 are filled. every one of our elementaries are completely staffed with the exception of 2 special education teachers. We've had a lot of internal transfer, different job opportunities for people, so that kind of delays the hiring process when we start doing that, and so a lot of the movement, is due to that also. Mr. Woodman had asked that we staff on projected numbers next year, and, that's really, really important for our schools, and so that has also, give us some flexibility for additional hiring. That's really important for the principals. The principals also have a lot of flexibility as far as how they're using these units, so we've had several principals, instead of using classroom units, they may have opted to change that to a specific unit, like a special education unit. And so a lot of our vacancies are for some really specific spots like that as far as special education, and they're doing that just based on their needs. So right now, we're at a 98% fill rate for certified people. For our classified people, out of approximately 500, we have about 18 are not filled. That's really, really good. That includes C&P, bus drivers, only 4 bus drivers down right now, aides, custodians. Our next meeting is June 24th. Anticipate, if we can hold what we have, we don't have a lot of movement the rest of this month. I mean, I would expect us to be all within 1 or 2 being filled. And then, of course, as soon as we do that, things happen in July. But we're in a really good spot right now. Like I said, I was certified out of 650, we're at 98%. That's looking for 13 people. And out of those 13, I expect all those to be filled during the June 24th meeting.
We're, I feel like we're in really good shape. Huge shout out to Ms. Harrington. She's really been on this stuff, and changing the process of how we operate at the end of the year has really helped that. And again, Ms. Harrington has been instrumental in, hey, we gotta get these hires done sooner. So I appreciate all the extra board meetings y'all allowed us to do and everything else. So we feel very, very good. So Ms. Harrington, I appreciate all you done on that. All right, the next item, policy 3.22 update. Basically, the former policy on selling property, there was a portion in there where it talked about auctioning off land. That's very outdated. This policy update was recommended by our attorneys. It basically just removes some of the antiquated verbiage and better reflects current state law. The last item in this portion of the agenda, I would like to call Dr. Marsh to come up and give us an update on dual enrollment early release.
At your request, we conducted research on dual enrollment and dual credit and how that impacts some of our students' schedules. We know that some of our students may, especially their senior year, they may be in dual enrollment and they be sitting inside a high school class or classroom or library waiting on
Side note before I need to interrupt you, Dr. Marshall. So part of this discussion, just full disclosure, I was saying, hey, I know we got to do something because I'm tired of hearing my daughter come home fussing every day that I sit in a classroom for 3 blocks of the day. And so, that was the subtle jab. I appreciate that.
So what we did is we reached out to several other school districts to see what they're doing throughout the state. We also reached out to the State Board of Education, some of their leadership, and they've given us some leeway and some insights in the way we can approach it. One of the things that we know we need to do is have a consistent way how we code it in our school, with all our high schools. And then we're also looking at expanding policy 6.31, which is our work studies program, which currently allows students to have an early release option during the school day for planned and supervised educational experiences or work-based learning experiences, such as co-op, dual enrollment, extended learning opportunities. The expansion, though, would include additional approved activities such as independent study, community service, and participation in private instruction, whether that's related to academic, athletic, or artistic pursuits, with a caveat that if you are in some recognized association sports, you can't do those kind of things. And then at the present moment, we've asked our principals to review a document that highlights the potential procedures that we're looking at, as well as the potential commissions that will follow. Be doing any of the specialized things like community service, independent study, those things will require someone other than the parent to sign off on that these things are actually happening.
So, Doc, if you don't mind, kind of go into, dual enrollment, for example, like how we were under the impression we had to have them on campus.
Right.
Moving forward next year, what we, feel like.
So, under certain advice that we got previous, our students who enrolled in dual enrollment, we felt like if they were doing it online or they had to remain on campus supervised in a certain location. And so we did that a lot of times through our libraries, or we assigned a teacher who would, or facilitator who would watch those kids during that time. What that has done is it has created some dilemmas on some of our campuses. One, kids are bored, and I don't know what that does to the mind. And we also have to assign personnel to that. So as we have reached out, the State Department has given us that there are different districts which our research has found out that we found them, that they are learning how to code that and allow those kids to represent on their schedule that they're actually that dual enrollment class, so we know where they are. Of course, when you do that, parents got to sign off that that's where they are, and they know where they are, and they're responsible for those kids. A couple other options we saw were students, they have the credits that they need, and they're taking 2 or 3 classes. We saw with some systems allow kids to do a flex period at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day. We explored those options as well, where kids possibly could, 1 or 2 periods at the end or beginning of the day, have an early release if they go into one of these, approved activities.
Any questions for Dr. Moore?
I'm so excited. I feel like you're talking to me. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Marsh, I appreciate all your hard work and appreciate you looking into that. So, what this really does for us and for our schools, as the option B path becomes more and more utilized, we're going to have some flexibility on our master schedule. So this shifts us, and we're going to, again, bring y'all some policy updates at the next board meeting on this, but this, in theory, should shift us from the mindset of having to schedule teacher aides and electives that kids don't need. It should now, we're putting kids that need the electives in the elective and actually allowing the seniors who have done what they need to have other opportunities off campus. So it's just a modernizing what we're trying to do, and I think it changes the game on your master schedule at your secondary school. So, Dr. Marsh, appreciate all your hard work.
Yes, sir.
All right, before the recommendation for approval of the consent agenda, I'll hit a couple of highlights on each item. Item number 3 contains supplemental pay requests related to summer school and summer learning, summer maintenance, and other services. Item number 4 contains a list of items no longer in working condition, need to be disposed. Item number 5, request approval to reject the Marbury High School erosion project from one vendor that was submitted, and allow the board to enter into negotiations in accordance with Alabama Code 39-2-6. On this item and one later on, I believe it's item 8. Basically, we had one bid that came in. It was much higher than what we originally expected. State law allows us, if we reject it, then we can go into and have different negotiations. So it opens up the door for other avenues. Item number 6, request approval for Avery Communications to provide 20 open gate weapons detection units. The additional units will be deployed to all secondary school locations as an additional safety measure. The vendor is a member of the TIPS Buying Cooperative, contract number 230202. The cost of the project is $374,170, and 2021 bond funds will be used to cover the cost of this project. I think Paul's there and give Mr. Camara a huge shout out here. He's really been pushing these units for a long time. This is what we were doing at the end of the year, was testing how these units would work compared to the other ones. The other ones work fine. They're just very, very, very sensitive. These are more designed to actually pick up weapons. This will allow us to be able to use these units daily on our secondary campuses. Now, the debate is, do you move to your elementary campuses? That's what we got to look at. Right now, we need to order the secondary side. Not sure if we'll do this yet for elementary, but I'm sure it's coming at some point. Again, you see the cost of it is pretty substantial. But these work really well. The schools enjoyed them. We worked out a couple of kinks. Kids walked through. I know Prattville High School, we didn't get any complaints, I don't think. We used them every day at Prattville High School for the last, I think 9 weeks of the school year, and it just got where it was clockwork, so, added layer of security there. Item number 7, request approval of fencing contract with Walls and Sons Fencing. We did not receive any bids in accordance with Alabama Code 39-2-6, Walls and Sons Fencing. And the Ottumwa County Board of Education negotiated contract prices acceptable to all parties. Various funding sources will be used to cover the cost of this project. The fencing contract is in your packets. Really excited about this because I have some serious concerns with some of our campuses, and I will just throw this out there on a couple things. It's always bothered me how the primary school has a chain, whatever that is. We're looking at things like that. How do we secure our campuses better? Daniel Pratt on the back side of the campus, once we built the new kindergarten, we're having massive problems with cars zipping through there with kids out at PE. So we're gonna be bringing you some estimates on a lot of fencing projects to really secure our campuses, and you know, this will be a major initiative across the district. Item number 8, request approval to reject the Billingsley Applied Science Teaching Lab and Animal Barn project from one vendor, the one the vendor submitted, and allow the board to enter negotiations in accordance with Alabama Code 39-2-6. I'll pause there. With all these construction projects, the cost is astronomical, and I think some of it's uncertainty, but in these cases where I'm asking you to reject the bid, again, it's because there's one bid, that's the only one. State law does give us some flexibility once we get past that rejection. These projects are not dead by no means. We just need to take a little different avenue on trying to get the cost down. Are there any questions with anything on the consent agenda as presented? All right, I recommend approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Board members, you've heard the superintendent's recommendation. May I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second? Any discussion? Does that follow the bid law?
It does, absolutely. It absolutely.
All those in favor?
It does. 39-2-6.
All those in favor?
Yes, ma'am, it does. I recommend approval of the personnel report as presented.
Board members, you've heard the superintendent's recommendation. May I get a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Any discussions? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand.
All right, just a few quick things on superintendent report. First off, our summer feeding program kicks off Thursday, I believe, at Marbury High School, if I remember right. Sir?
Last
Yeah, sorry, past Thursday. It's been a long week. It's going, we're getting ready to continue that. We're providing free meals again this summer. The main thing I need the public to understand is, yes, it benefits the public and it benefits our kids, and that's the goal of it. It also benefits the schools. You know, obviously there's a financial aspect of it too that helps us. So it's a win-win for everyone. Really important to give the kids what they need over the summer as well. The meal kits include breakfast and lunch with fresh fruit, vegetables, and milk. The meals can be picked up from Aubrey High School or Prattville High School for children 18 years or younger. Registration is required. Again, that's part of the requirements for it, but children do not have to reside in our county or be enrolled in Talk County schools to participate, and we encourage our families to go to the website, the ACBO website, go super register. That was a lot of verbiage there. I'm sorry I tangled that one up a little bit. A couple things, you know, we just wrapped up graduation. There are some stats here I want to make sure everybody knows because it's pretty impressive stuff. This year's senior group had more than 10 million in scholarships. There was nearly 70% that are planning to attend college, while many others pledged their service to the military. Just some specific numbers there. Our district totals of graduates was 615. Our total number planning to attend college was 389. Total number going into the military was 51. Total going into the workforce, 105. Total number of scholarships, 217, and the total amount was $10,254,713. $10,254,713. Quite the accomplishment, and I know y'all are proud. We're proud as well, for sure. Last bit of good news. Huge shout out Ms. Allen and Ms. Addison with our chronic absenteeism. You know, as you know, this is a requirement from the state for us to monitor it. It's part of state law that kids have to come to school. If you would have told me a few years ago when I was at Marbury High School as principal, or even last year, that the district level would ever get below 10%, I'd say there's no way. We finished this year at 9.96%, which is down from 14.29%. Again, huge shout out, Ms. Allen. She has a very difficult job. She does a really good job keeping track of all of it. And huge shout out, Ms. Addison, and everybody working together pushing that. So, that's a big drop.
It's amazing. I mean, from where we were after COVID to less than 10%, kudos to everybody involved. It's amazing.
Excuse me, are there any questions with anything Superintendent's report or any questions? All right.
There being no further business, may I